There's two Tar Heel defensive players who I think of as just the Kenan Stadium crowd loved it when they made plays.
Yep, I know who one of them's already going to be. It's not our guest, but I know where you're going with this.
One of them is Bruce Carter because you got to yell Bruce.
Yep.
Yeah. The other is right here in Pod World headquarters, Brandon Spoon. Because when Brandon Spoon chased down a ball carrier all the way across the field, you got to give it the spoon.
Yeah.
Nothing better than that. Did you ever think the Tar Heel fans, Brandon, were booing you?
I think my mom thought they were booing me at first until my dad had to kind of set her straight. So.
Explain it to her. Say, no, honey, this is a good thing.
Yeah, early on she wasn't sure, but then once she figured it out, it was pretty nice.
And then she was the one yelling it louder than anybody, probably.
Probably so, yes, sir.
Brandon, it's great to see you. Of course, Brandon, a terrific linebacker for the Tar Heels in the late 90s, early 2000s, playing the NFL with the Buffalo Bills as well. We're going to talk about all that, but catch us up, first of all, Brandon, what you're doing right now, like what's going on in your life on your day-to-day?
Day-to-day, pretty busy. I'm in sales. I'm in medical sales, and I've been doing that for, I guess, about 15 years. My side job, I guess, is coaching. So I coach back at my high school, Williams High School. I've been doing that about 20 years. And then I'm a husband and a father. I've got a 22-year-old that just graduated from App, who's an elementary school teacher, a junior at UNC Wilmington, a senior in high school now, my son, and then a 4-year-old. So I stay busy.
You said, you know what, guys? Let's get one more.
Let's run this back.
Yeah. It's a lot different the second time around, I can tell you.
What do you like about coaching?
It's a personal connection for me. I coach at the same high school that I went to. My dad was a coach and athletic director. And when I got done playing in the NFL, the same staff that I played for in high school was still there. So I just kind of showed up to practice one day and said, do you mind if I help? And 20 years later, I've been able to kind of stay on the sidelines. But I know too much football not to use it. So it's a way to give back. It's a way to reconnect a little bit with my dad and kind of have that connection. But it's also, it keeps me in touch. I've got high school kids, so I kind of know what's going on. But it's just fun. I love football. I love everything about it. And coaching is it's my release. Best way to say it.
You've played football at every level. What is it about those high school football Friday nights, especially in a town like Burlington that cares, that just makes them so much fun to be part of?
Because they do care, because it means something. There's history. People can come back, and it's you get to see people excel. With social media, with all the different outlets people have today, being in person, connecting socially, and watching people get better on the field and compete. It's a lot of fun, and it means something to the families that are there, to the friends, and I could play at every level. Where there's always going to be high school stories when you go back and talk to your friends. So it's something that really lives on for a long time.
I always like to ask this question of guys who have become coach. Like, are you the type of coach you thought you would be? Or are you like crazier on the sidelines than you thought you would be? Like, what is your demeanor compared to how you thought it might be?
I think I am how do I say it well? I think I'm exactly the way I was coached. I find myself more like Coach Torbush than my dad. My dad was very calm and relaxed, and Coach Torbush was very far from that on the field and very animated. So I find myself coaching more like Coach Torbush coached me, and then some of the NFL coaches. I take on the personalities of what I was most used to.
Now, we've had Coach Torbush here on the pod. What is something that would get Carl Torbush animated? If you're playing for him and mess something up, what's something that sets him off?
Just about anything that you do wrong. My freshman year, Kay Mays was the starter, and I was his backup. And Kay would make a mistake in practice, and Coach Torbush knew that I would mimic everything he did. Just that's how I learned. So he would take Kay out, and knowing I would make the same exact mistake, and then just ream me in practice, and then look at Kay and say, see, this is what you're supposed to do this. So that was his way of teaching. But he knew I could take it. Coach Torbush is passionate about perfection, and so that's what made him a great coach and why I love him so much.
That's like that old joke when like a big school does something wrong with the NCAA, but so they'll punish the little guys
exactly.
to show you what you did wrong.
Exactly.
You were getting to play the role of the little guy.
Absolutely.
Mac recruited you though, right, Coach?
Yes.
I mean, so what was that process like? Obviously, Carolina had some really good defenses at that point in time. But what was that process like, and what was Mac Brown in your living room as a recruiter like?
Coach Brown does a great job of recruiting the family as well. And I had opportunities to go just about everywhere, and it just felt at home to be at Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was close to home. It was personal. But, I drove up to the school one day unannounced and asked if I could talk to him. Walked in, hung around campus for about 3 hours with Coach Torbush and Coach Moody and then Coach Brown. And, on the way home, I called and told my parents I was just going to commit. Like, this is where I wanted to be. And Coach Brown just, he recruits you based on who you are. So he knew what I needed. There was no flash. He knew the kind of person I was, the family I grew up with, and, just recruited based on me and made me feel at home.
How long did it take you being on campus at Carolina with some really good defensive players that you were seeing every day in practice to figure out that, I can do it at this level too?
I think I was so young and naive and confident. I didn't think twice. I came in with the attitude that I'm going to play, that you're not going to be able to redshirt me. You're not going to keep me off the field. That's just the mentality that I've had with pretty much everything that I do, just confidence, overconfidence, stupidity sometimes.
Hey, whatever works.
Whatever works. But that's the mindset that I had, and it just worked out for me. And it wasn't until I got validation from some of the older players after the fact that, my overconfidence was justified. I did a good job.
Who'd you look up to on those teams?
Oh, it's a who's who. I mean, you had Vonnie, you had Brian Simmons, Greg Ellis, Kay Mays, Keith Newman. We were loaded. Ebenezer Ekubon was only a year ahead of me. Nate Hobgood-Chittick, Dre, Robert Williams, Omar Brown, Greg Williams. We had such a good core of defensive players.
That is a good core of defensive players.
I think if you look at the two deep from my sophomore year, 19, 20 played in the NFL. So it was not just the play on the field. It was how to conduct yourself, how to work. You could have fun, but when it came time to work, it's time to work. And they instilled the leadership that, I tried to carry on after they left.
I think it would be tough to get a Brandon Spoon in 2023 behind that kind of depth defensively, because 2023 Brandon Spoon would go somewhere, well, I want to start or else I'm leaving. What do you think you learned by not being the guy from the moment you stepped on campus and having to fight some of those guys off?
Well, it gives you the opportunity to learn and make mistakes and get chewed out in practice when the starter doesn't do it right. But that's how I learned as well. And it was, perseverance is a big thing that I think is sometimes missing with college football these days, based on the transfer portal and how it works. But it teaches you, it's life. Football is the best practice for life, outside of school. And it teaches you how to battle through adversity, how to overcome challenges, injuries, personal loss. It prepares you. Plus, it gives you a brotherhood of people that are going through the same thing. And I think that's something that's overlooked too. When you have these guys that want to start or instant gratification, there's a lot that you gain from going through some tough times with your teammates that I think some of these college athletes could benefit from.
You mentioned two things there that unfortunately were part of your story, and that's injury and also personal loss. Let's start with the injury side of things. What did you ever feel like would you look at your biceps and be like, what are you doing to me? Why does this keep happening?
Yeah, I think at the end of my playing time, I was done. In third year in Buffalo, I tore my quad. And then in St. Louis, my fourth year, I tore my hamstring. And at that point, I knew it was.
And you had done both biceps, right?
Done my right bicep my second year in Buffalo. So there was a point that I knew my body just told me enough. And, I went out on my terms. I gave everything I had. And, I wish I could have played for 15 years, but I was very fortunate to get the 4 that I did.
Do you ever feel resentful of that? Because I mean, like quality of player, like you could have played 10 years in the NFL had your body been able to hold up. Do you ever feel resentful or no?
There was a time that I didn't watch football right after I retired, as you'll say, but years, maturity, and hindsight make things okay, and I take it for what it's worth. And I went into going to college knowing that football was going to end one day, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do it for a longer time than most.
Sure.
So yes, resentful initially, but I'm grateful for the experience and opportunity that I had.
The other part of that story, the personal loss part, your dad, who, as you mentioned, coached at Williams, longtime coach at Williams, passed away while you were at Carolina.
Sophomore year.
Who helped you deal with that, and how did you figure out how to play football when you had been playing football for him for your whole life?
Well, like that's the brotherhood that I was talking about earlier. I don't think I can list a one person that helped me get through that. Obviously, I can say Coach Torbush because he was the linebacker coach. He was the head coach at the time. He played a big part of it. But at my dad's funeral, surprising to me, I see 2 busloads of my teammates show up at the graveside, and that is something that I will never ever be able to express individually to everyone. But that's what got me through it. And the football part it truly was a release. I needed football more than football needed me at that point, because there was a lot of anger, there were a lot of emotions, and a lot of just, whys that the practice field and the weight room and the strength coaches allowed me to use football as my therapy.
You're about your dad's age now when
Yes.
he passed away. How do you think that's changed the way you parent your kids?
I do not take anything for granted. I don't take I tell my kids, my son who's a kicker, and he had a bad practice one day, and he's pouting and upset about it, and he's going to be mad if he hears me say this. But, I told him I'm not going to waste any time worrying about a bad practice when I'm getting to share this opportunity with you. And it's that example. Don't waste time with what you can't control. It's in the past. Move on. Make the best of where you are right now. And that's, as I get older, and I've actually, I've outlived my dad at this point, and it's a scary thing as a father of older or younger kids, but it makes me appreciate where I am and what I have right now.
What is being the dad of a 4-year-old at this point in your life like?
I have a wonderful, wonderful wife.
Yeah, good answer,
Yeah.
Brandon.
No.
Spoo.
Yeah. My wife Kate does an amazing job with our youngest daughter Libby, but it's different. It is, when you're young in your 20s and you have toddlers and 4-year-olds, you have the energy, and this 4-year-old is wide open. So it's different, but you appreciate it more. You appreciate the little things. You worry less about some things. You worry more about others. So pick your battles,
like your sleep and your knees and things like that.
Those have been gone long before now, so it's okay.
When you look around the room at like preschool orientation or something, you're like, why are all these people so young?
Yeah, it's different. There's nobody my age. I'm going to be, there's the likelihood I'll have grandkids and middle schoolers at the same time, so, which is very odd to say out loud, especially on a podcast too. So, that's really weird, but it is what it is now.
Are you able to keep up with the Tar Heels? Do you keep up with it? I mean, obviously you're close by in Burlington, but are you keeping up with Carolina and what's going on?
I do watch it. I follow it with social media, with watching the games. I do touch base with Coach Brown occasionally, but yeah, I'm thrilled with what's going on, and there's ups and downs every year, but last week was a great start to this season.
Were you surprised when Coach Brown came back? And then when you hear him now, do you still hear the same guy, or at least the core of the same guy that you heard in the 90s?
Coach Brown is the same. Yes. Now he's probably got some wisdom and hindsight from all the years of coaching and being away, but he's exactly the same. I hear the same, conversations, how he reacts to the press, how he treats the players, and it's great. You want to play for him. He's a great coach. I wasn't shocked when he came back. I was hopeful that he would because it just lined up too perfectly when he did. So I was really excited when he did come back a few years ago.
You know this as well as anybody. Kids are different now than they were in the early mid-90s. What is it about him specifically and his personality or whatever that enables him to relate to 20-year-olds today and 20-year-olds 30 years ago?
You know, I guess more than anything, it's the track record of success. You know, it doesn't matter your age or your pedigree. You know, what talks or what you put on the field. And he's put player after player in professional ranks. He's been successful on the field as a coach. He is amazing, and you guys know this. He never forgets a name or a fact or a date, and he will show up and know everything about my family from 20 years ago as if we had just had dinner. But he's incredible, and Miss Sally's incredible as well, and they haven't changed a bit, and that's why he's been so successful.
What was your year like in Buffalo? That first year where I think you probably got thrown into the fire maybe a little sooner than you anticipated. What was that year like? And just looking back on it now, how cool was it that you did get to live out that NFL dream?
Oh, it was amazing. It was cold in Buffalo, I can tell you that. It's far different than Burlington or Chapel Hill. Sam Cowart was an all-pro linebacker and tore his Achilles the first week of the season. So I think week 2 was my first start, and it was against Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James and Marvin Harrison. I mean, talk about a wow moment. But it was fun. I look back, I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. I was just kind of running on a hamster wheel and just trying to keep up. But it was fun. I mean, I look back, it was amazing. And the experiences that I had, and I loved Buffalo, New York, because it's pretty much just like home, just like Burlington.
Right.
It was fun, and I learned a lot, and, I was hoping to capitalize a little bit more than that one season, but injuries prevented that.
You had 2 interceptions for touchdowns.
Yes.
As an NFL player. Were you just hiding these pass coverage skills while you were at
Batted
Carolina?
passes. They were both
tips and overthrows, baby.
They were both batted passes. Actually, the second one in Atlanta it was a blown coverage. If he would have connected with the open running back, it would have been an 80-yard touchdown. But he got sacked as he threw it, and it kind of fell right in my hands. So, luck plays a lot in some of these football games as well.
What were you thinking? Do you remember? I mean, I know this was a long time ago. Do you remember what you were thinking? It's like you're just running in
Buffalo. I was just running. The first one, I was just against the Panthers. It was 40-some yards, and I was just trying to run. I had no idea what I was doing or how to get there, but I was just running as fast as I could and kind of lumbered into the end zone. The second one in Atlanta was a little bit more fun, but it was only 7 yards, so I didn't have that much time to think.
That's my kind of pick six.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we need that little 7-yarder.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about something really important and even more fun than that. Aren't you a big Cubs fan?
Huge Cubs fan, yes.
So as we record this, the Cubs are playing very well. I'm a big Cubs fan. What's the ceiling on this Cubs team?
I'm not allowed to talk about it because I do. It is a jinx if I say that. One of my old roommates and teammates, Brian Schmitz, still lives in Chicago. We actually have season tickets. I've waited for about 10 to 15 years to get off the wait list, so we finally got it. So we traveled up there and to see a lot of games. I would prefer not to say, just because I would love to be able to see some playoff baseball in Chicago.
But fair to say they're fun to watch.
They are. It's so much fun when baseball is exciting in August and September. It's fun when it means something. At Wrigley Field, absolutely.
We could talk about that for hours.
I was about to say, Adam, so what was the World Series win like? Adam was there. You were there, weren't you, Adam?
I was there for Game 7 in Cleveland.
Wow. Now that's a bucket list for sure.
My son and I went, and he had to miss school, and I very nicely explained that this was probably the only day in his life that this would ever occur, and school was going to occur 179 more days in that school year.
We're hoping this year, if they make the wild card at home, my wife is going because we've got a game, a bigger game that week. But if they make the division series, I get to go because it's a bye week the next week, so I'm hoping they really do well.
See, Brandon's already plotted it out on the calendar. That's how I can tell he's a big fan.
Won't talk about it here. You can't talk about it because I've jinxed it, but I've already got it plotted out if they make the division series.
Absolutely.
Hey, you got to plan ahead.
It's on the calendar on the fridge at home. There's no doubt about it.
Yep, absolutely.
Looking back, when you think about your time at Carolina, like what stands out? What's important? What does it still mean to you now? 20 years after you're
It's
here?
just, I love Chapel Hill. I love UNC. I love my time here. It was the range of emotions that I went through, the maturity that I was able to gain here. And I said it before, the brotherhood. It's indescribable. And I can talk to the guys that I played with and I went to school with today as if I was, still a sophomore, or junior, or senior in college. It's just an incredible place. Coach Brown does a good job of making this a home. And it's special. There's a lot of places that if you go somewhere, that's where you're meant to be. And I was lucky that Carolina was that place for me. And I will always be indebted to this university for the opportunities that it's given me, both on the field and off, and as an adult, and even for my kids. It's amazing. I love this university.